Morning everyone, class 11 and 12. Today's lesson is going to be about the gas exchange system. So mainly it's going to be about the respiratory system. Okay, first of all, when we are talking about the respiratory system, we're going to include several things. What are they? The structure of the respiratory system, the lining, each organ or each part of the respiratory system and its function. And first thing is that since it's actually a respiratory system, so practically we're going to use it, or its function is for respiration. Okay, the gas exchange system or the respiration system. The cross structure of lungs, that the lungs are in the chest cavity, surrounded by the pleural membranes, which encloses an airtight space. This space contains a small quantity of fluid to allow friction-free movement as the lungs ventilate by the movement of the diaphragm and ribs. Okay, fair enough. So for the respiratory system here, the first thing that we have the trachea, we've got the lungs, we've got the bronchus, we've got the bronchioles here, and these are the air sacs, and this is the heart, the ribs. Okay, and these are the intercostal muscles, and this is the diaphragm. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the bronchi. The bronchi here is a branch to form smaller bronchioles. The bronchioles are surrounded by smooth muscle, which can contract or relax to adjust the diameter of these tiny airways due to the absence of the cartilage. During exercise, the muscles relax to allow a greater flow of air to the alveoli. Okay, so this is the bronchi. Once the bronchi enters the lungs, it starts dividing into smaller bronchiole, or what we call them bronchioles here. And then at the end of it, we'll have the alveoli, which is the air sac, which is the main site for gas exchange that happens inside of the lung. So when you're going to be asked where is the main site for gas exchange, it happens in the alveoli, or which we call the air sac. The cartilage. I believe when you took in grade 7 the skeleton system and the bones generally, you would know that the cartilage is actually the covering of the ending of bones. It allows less friction and act as a shock absorber. So the cartilage is a connective tissue, sort of a tissue. The type of it is connective. It keeps airways in trachea and bronchi open and air resistance very low, and it prevents them from collapsing or bursting as the air pressure changes during breathing. The cartilage present in irregular plates and incomplete rings in bronchus and in incomplete rings only in trachea. So the cartilage here, like in Eid al-Adha, when you come and check the trachea here, which is this part, you will find out that it's kind of like the AC tube, more likely, as it's not firm and it's not soft, that sort of glassy plastic thing. This is what we call cartilage. Okay. The next thing that we have something called the epithelium. The epithelium here, it's more likely as the inner lining of the organs. The air flows down lungs through the trachea and the bronchi, which are lined by cells adapted to remove the particles from the air. As we mentioned before, that the air, while it goes from your nose till it reaches the larynx, and from there to the trachea, it's going to be filtered. By what? By the tiny hairs that you've got inside of your nose. This is the first filtration. The second filtration happens while it's in the trachea, and it goes through the bronchi and then to the bronchus and to the alveoli. So all the way down, it's going to be filtered. The first time it happened by the tiny hair inside of your nose. The second one is going to be filtered by something called the mucous membrane, the sticky material that is covering the inner lining of whether it's a trachea, bronchus or bronchioles. Okay. These cells make up tissue called epithelium. There are main two kinds. We've got the ciliated, that means it have tiny hair, or the goblet cells. The ciliated cells here, they are lined with tiny cytoplasmic extension, which we call cilia or tiny hair. They are responsible for the continual beating of mucus towards the larynx. And the goblet cells are found between the ciliated cells in large amounts. The upper part of the goblet cell is swollen with mucine droplets. This is the mucous membrane. And they are secreted by this cell. The mucus secreted by goblet cell traps the pathogens, which are then moved out with the help of the cilia. So the cilia here, it's more likely as it allows the mucus to move from like top to bottom or from bottom to top. The mucus is a slimy solution of mucin, which is composed of what? Of glycoproteins with any carbohydrate chain that makes them sticky and able to trap inhalated particles. So it's also made by mucus glands beneath the epithelium. The lungs are a site for gas exchange between air and blood. Large number of alveoli are present to increase the surface area. The wall of the alveolus is very thin and it contains, or actually is made of, squamous epithelium to decrease the diffusion distance for efficient gas exchange. The outside of the alveolus are capillaries, also 1 cell thick. Okay, and then we've got elastic fibers. They allow the alveoli to stretch during inhalation and recoil during expiration, during the maximum expansion. The surface area for diffusion increases and the air expelled efficiently during the recoil. Okay, one of the things that actually affect the whole breathing and it's like a major threat to the lungs is actually smoking. We've got something called passive smoking and something called mainstream smoking and side stream smoking. The passive smoking is actually breathing in someone else's cigarette. So someone's like smoking beside you, the whole smoke and thing, you just tend to inhale it, and it's like you didn't plan for it, but it just happened. The mainstream smoking, smoke from filter mouth end, and side stream smoking, the burning tip containing almost 85% of smoke released. Many toxic substances are higher concentration here and are exposed to the others nearby. We've got something called chronic bronchitis. The term chronic, that means it always shows up. It's like constantly, like for now it's like I'm settled, I feel okay. 2 months later or a year later, ta-da, it shows up again. So the chronic bronchitis is actually a constant inflammation of the bronchus, the damage and obstruction of the airways. Tar, which is actually one of the ingredients, or I wouldn't say ingredients, more likely as a component of the cigarette, stimulates the goblet cell and mucous glands to enlarge and secrete more mucus. You will find those who are smoking, or smokers by general, like they tend to have runny nose more than the usual. Why? Because the tar inside of the cigarette actually stimulates the goblet cells to secrete more mucus, and also inhibits the cleaning action of the ciliated epithelium and destroys many cilia. When it destroys and weakens the sweeping action, that means your air is no longer being filtered. By then, it's like you can catch cold so easily. You always have a runny nose. Mucus bacteria viruses accumulate and obstruct. That means they actually like stuck or like stand in the way of the bronchioles. Over time, damaged epithelia are replaced by scar tissue. Smooth muscles surrounding the bronchiole becomes thicker and narrowing the airways and causing difficult breathing. An infection in the lungs cause linings to become inflamed and further narrower the airways, and also they suffer from coughing out the phlegm, which is kind of like a mixture of the white blood cells, mucus and bacteria. That's why they always have like someone who's around 20s and he's like a smoker, and when he coughs it's like, oh dear, you're like an old man coughing. I was like, oh. Okay, I hope you got the idea right now. Now we've got the last part here. Emphysema. What is emphysema? When the lung actually is inflamed, causes phagocytosis to leave the blood and line at the airways. They release the protein digestion enzyme, elastase, that destroys the elastin of alveolar walls, making the pathway for phagocytes to reach the lining and remove the bacteria. Thus, the alveoli does not stretch and recoil during breathing, which is a major problem here. The bronchioles collapse during the expiration, trapping the air inside of the alveoli, which often bursts. Large spaces appear where the alveoli have burst, and this reduces the surface area for gas exchange. The number of the capillaries also decrease, so the less oxygen is absorbed into the blood, and we will hear that wheezing and breathlessness are common symptoms. So when someone has emphysema, you will find out that it's more likely as his chest or her chest are making those sort of noises. That's like, as it's like a whistle. One of the diseases here we've got is called COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. What is a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? Pulmonary here, it's a term we use in medical field that defines anything related to the lungs, like the cardiovascular, it's related to the circulatory system, the renal referred to the kidneys, the neuro referred to the brain, and so on, and hepatic for the liver. The chronic obstructive, chronic here, that means it shows up every time, and it's not like a severe illness and then it's like you're cured. No, it shows up every single time. The complex disease when chronic bronchitis and emphysema occur with each other. So by here you've got obstruction in your airways, and also it comes associated with the emphysema. The lung cancer, which is most like a major of people like around the world, they have died suffering from lung cancer, and sometimes it's like the person just lives with it for a long time and causes him a sudden death. So practically, please do not smoke. It's worthless. Tar also contains several carcinogens that cause mutation in epithelial DNA, leading to uncontrolled cell division and growth of tumor. Tumor, which we call in Arabic al-waram. Cancerous cells break away from primary tumors and begin to form secondary tumors in other parts, which we call metastases. For an example, like I've diagnosed this patient with cancer in the liver. After a while, I discover that this tumor or this cancer like showed up in the brain, for an example. And what happened here is that there has been like an unstoppable division, which we call metastasis, and it transferred from this part to that part of the body. So instead of having it as a primary tumor, we will call that it starts to having a secondary tumor, which we call metastasis. And by here, it's known as malignant tumor. Malignant tumor, it's like the severe and the bad type of tumors or cancers. Cancers often develop at the base of the trachea, where it's divided into the bronchi, as this is where most of tar is deposited. Nicotine stimulates the central nervous system to reduce the diameter of arterioles due to buildup of plaque, and also releases adrenaline. As a result, it increases the blood pressure and the heart rate, damaging the endothelial lining and causing arteriosclerosis, Arteriosclerosis, which we call in Arabic تصلب الشرايين, which is more likely as narrowing of the arterioles. Platelets become sticky with the increased chances of clot forming in blood vessels, which we call thrombosis. The blood flow is decreased and supply to extremities, that means the limbs, that means your hands and feet. It stimulates nerve endings in the brain to release dopamine, which is associated with the reinforcement pleasure experience and makes smoking addictive. Carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin and RBCs, the red blood cells, to form carboxyhemoglobin, which decreases an RBC oxygen carrying capacity and also damages the artery lining, leading to buildup of fatty tissue and reduction of blood flow, causing stroke and chronic heart disease. Thank you for listening. I'll be waiting for your questions.